ancient giants, shocking new evidence. For the longest time, giants have been nothing but folklore. There's a story we are told as children while being tucked in bed about large, unfriendly creatures that are 10 times larger than the average human. When we grow up, and suddenly we no longer believe these tales. But every fairy tale has some atom of truth to it, right? And maybe giants are not figments of our imagination, but rather extraterrestrial beings that have existed and may still exist in the universe. Giants, from ancient Greek, gigas, cognate giga, are beings of human-like appearance, but at times prodigious in size and strength or bear an otherwise notable appearance. Numerous theories about ancient giants that predated and still exist on Earth have been proposed over the years. But the real question is, do giants exist? Numerous myths and tales from all over the world depict enormous animals that are 2 to 4 times bigger than the typical person. Giants appear in Greek mythology and even in the Bible, yet debate over giants continues to this day. Do they really exist, or are these creatures merely the creatures of myth and folklore? Despite what some believers may think, the numerous pieces of evidence that have been found throughout the world do not demonstrate that giants once roamed the planet, but there is new evidence that may argue against this theory. Let's look at some of the shocking new evidence that giants once existed in the past. In February 2018, at Harvard University, a shocking genetic study was carried out and published in the Nature journal. The researchers at Harvard announced a discovery about ancient human DNA. It reveals that the people who built Stonehenge right away are the ancient Britons, who abruptly and virtually vanished from the British Isles, leaving almost no DNA in the present-day British population. According to the 2018 study, the Neolithic inhabitants of the British Isles lost their genetic signature a very short time after they built Stonehenge, which was then largely replaced by an entirely new human culture. Now, this is quite mysterious and might cause you to raise an eyebrow, but this isn't even half the story. The Harvard study is a complete shocker because it answers the question of how a civilization that existed before this time can suddenly vanish into thin air without a trace. It is undoubtedly the most unexpected and shocking conclusion you could think of. Using a cutting-edge new method, the study took DNA samples from ancient human bones and compared them to DNA from contemporary individuals living nearby. After that, scientists calculated what percentage of the modern population is descendant from the ancient group. So the new genetic theta is really providing an example of the population replacement in which the genetic markers that characterize a population are almost entirely replaced in a relatively short amount of time by the genetic signature that characterizes another population from a different part of the world. A significant historical puzzle still surrounds the builders of Stonehenge's mysterious disappearance. According to ancient astronaut theorists and the flood myths that have been discovered all over the world, it might signify a purposeful purging of the human's genetic line. The discovery of a puzzling genetic lineage that has proven to be nearly impossible to trace recently may provide additional support for this, but this is unlikely. Researchers at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia, examined DNA data from various Native American populations in 1998 in an effort to identify their ancestry across the Bering Strait. Each of the 4 haplogroups, A, B, C, or D, that made up the lineages represents a different migration from the Asian continent between 20 and 30,000 years ago. Additionally, they discover that a small proportion of the native population has no genetic ties to any previously recognized subgroup. They can trace the ancestry back 36,000 years, but not to the Bering Strait. One human haplogroup, known as the X lineage, which is found in about 2.5% of some Native American groups and a small population of Europeans, stands out among the others. There is no relationship between Northern Europeans and people from the Middle East. We were unable to comprehend why these X haplogroups differ so greatly. Isn't it amazing that there is a group of people whom we presume to be native to this planet, but whose ancestry is completely unknown? Scientists merely claim to be perplexed by the situation and throw up their hands because these people are not somehow related to these people. While the origin of this X bloodline is unknown, some ancient astronaut theorists believe it may be a connection to a long-lost race of humans who once spanned the planet, including North America. The X lineage gene may be related to the giants that were first recorded in America in the middle of the 19th century and spread over the world. I should point out that in the 1800s, archaeologists started uncovering skeletons of giants. Many of them were 7 to 8 feet tall. Several large skeletons that were part of the ancient Adena Indian tribes' burial mounds were discovered, with the Valley of the Giants in Kawana Valley, West Virginia, having the highest concentration. But if you thought this was all new evidence that points out that there may have been a pre-existence of giants on Earth, well, there's more. About 6 human skeletons from the early 1400s and the mid-1500s were found in 2013 by a team of archaeologists excavating at a site in Ecuador. It didn't take long for them to find a few more pieces of a skeleton that made up the body of a person who once stood 7 feet 4 inches tall when they were alive. The first remnants they found were the ribcage and head of a female. Based on how well preserved the skeletons were, researchers came to the conclusion that they did not belong to people who were ill. Additionally, they found no evidence of giantism, a condition caused by a pituitary gland problem. The fact that one of the supposed giants died at an early age of 60 was also revealed to them. For the majority of giantism sufferers, this is viewed as a victory. They were commonly characterized as being tall, pale-skinned, and massive, pleasant humans. Others believe that they are totally legendary and originate from the spirit world. This discovery is noteworthy since some claim that the skeleton isn't really only 7 feet tall, but rather it would have stood more than 20 feet tall during its lifespan. That's a real-life Goliath right there, and isn't it impressive? In Mexico, in 1908, there was another indication that giants once existed on Earth. A couple of young people discovered a skeleton of, you guessed it, a huge human. When they turned over the bones to the authorities, this monster was said to have been roughly 8 feet, 11 inches tall. It was definitely shocking when the researchers' analysis findings were revealed. The ribs were comparable to those of a horse, the femur bone reportedly measured up to one of the miner's thighs, and the molars they found were big enough to split a coconut. The cranium was astonishingly large when it was found. It measured 18 inches from front to back. I'm not sure what more there is if there isn't astonishing proof of ancient giants. How do you feel? The discovery of the bones led the miners to the hypothesis that the location might have been the final resting place of a race of giants that predated the Aztecs. A large axe that weighed more than 30 pounds was also found by the miners along with the skeleton. Another piece of evidence is what is referred to as the footprint of God, which is located close to the Umpaluzi in South Africa. If you are from this area, feel free to comment below and let us know what you think about this. Nobody who sees this intriguing footprint is ever able to understand it. Geologists estimate that this footprint, which is about 4 feet long, was made between 200 million and 3 billion years ago. Many people believe that the giant footprint of Africa, also known as the footprint of God, is one of the best pieces of evidence we have today that a giant once existed because of its unmistakable similarity to a human footprint. As expected, many people, however, are dubious about the claims made about this footprint. While some contend that it is improbable that this stone is billions of years old, others contend that the enormous footprint may have formed naturally. But what unforeseen natural elements could produce a shape that remarkably resembles a human footprint? Please share your opinions with us if you know of any. If these giants were still alive today, just think how terrifying that would be. Even the thought of peering up at someone with horse-sized ribs or feet is frightening. It leaves a huge mark. Despite how terrifying it must have been or would be to live alongside animals 10 times your size, I find it very interesting to know that such extraterrestrial beings may have visited Earth in the past. Don't you think so?